Karen Jeffrey, the Designing Woman here. This is our first of tutorial videos about color. I want you to know the basics of what color is and does. I want you to know that the video you're about to do and that the project you're about to do is extremely elementary. Color is a very complex science, and so if you're interested in the science aspect of this at all, I urge you to look it up and begin a study. I think you'll be fascinated to find how much there is to know about color. But for our purposes, as we want to understand how to make a picture or how to look at a picture and determine how color is being used, this is a good exercise for you. So I realize that it's quite plain, it's not a very fancy project, but I think it's very instructive and well worth your time. So let's get started, and here are the supplies that you're going to need. The supplies you're going to need for this particular class, and some of these will go for other classes that we do online, will be your premium jet laser jet paper. I happen to choose HP paper. It's a big heavy bundle. It's a 32-pound paper, which means the paper is a heavier weight, so each page is thicker. And because it's laser jet, it's definitely smoother in texture. It's got a better finish on it. Choosing a less expensive paper is not particularly wise. You're going to need some pencils, and I would encourage you to choose a best quality that you can afford. My personal favorite is Ticonderoga. You need a size number 2 or an HB pencil. That means it's kind of a medium weight. This is the designations that they give to pencil hardnesses and softnesses. The reason I like Ticonderoga is that the lead is always centered properly, and it behaves very nicely. As you can see, I use mine a lot. The eraser is nearly gone, so I've added a small white plastic eraser. You can also use white plastic erasers that come standalone. There's a Pentel brand and a Staedtler brand, other brands, doesn't matter. A white plastic polymer eraser is a great tool to have in your chest. For this particular video, we're going to be using colored pencils, and surprisingly, Crayola brand inexpensive children's pencils are really very, very useful. They're not the best quality. If you want to do that, you go to an art supply store or an online source and purchase Barrel, Prismacolor, or Pentel, other higher end brands. But for what we're doing now and the work that we'll be doing in our student videos, these are probably the best choice. Inexpensive. I've chosen a 12-pack, but you can choose 8 and you'll have plenty to do this particular video with. You can see that they're sharpened ahead of time, so we're ready to just start right out. If you are taking this class, the online class, you can go to Moodle and download the templates that you're going to need. You're going to need to download the PDFs template number 1, template number 2, and the value color scale template. So we will be using those as we get started on today's lesson. You also want to download onto your LaserJet paper the outline drawing, or be ready to make your own drawing. I will be showing you how to do that. I've taken my own drawing from a long time ago. I did a painting project from this little drawing, and I will show you how to take your own drawing and transfer it to your LaserJet paper, or if you have a drawing tablet close by. I happen to use this Strathmore drawing tablet paper for practice, and so it really works good for basic drawing. And so I will demonstrate using my own drawing on this particular paper. If you are not part of my class online, you're going to want to go to the following website and look at and download some here is the website to go to: www.dreamhomederate.com/printable-color-wheel.html. Study those color wheels that you see there, numbers 1 and 2, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Yes, ignore number 3. They are using a primary color scheme using an extra primary that I don't believe is a primary. And so just ignore number 3. But download, for this particular video, you're going to want to download the black and white templates numbered 8 and 9. You'll see them as you scroll down a little bit. You're also going to need to create a value scale page for yourself. And so as the value scale that I've created for my online students, what you want to do is take a sheet of your laser paper, take a ruler, and create a box that is about 6.5 inches long, about 1¼ inches wide, divided into 10 spaces, and I think those spaces are about 5/8 of an inch wide. I don't do the math really well, but you can get the idea. Number them from 1 to 10. You're going to need one for the black and white, one for the color, and I would encourage you to have another space there. Have a couple of extra sheets of paper available, and then we will be able to get going. So go download those things, get yourself ready, and we will get started. So let's get out our template number 1, which will look like this. For those of you who are downloading from the website, it will be number 8. We're going to get our colored pencils out here, and we're going to talk about what are the primary colors. All colors are made up of these 3 colors. These 3 colors cannot be made by mixing anything else together. That's why they're called primary, the very first colors, the main colors. And we're going to choose red and blue and yellow. Those are our primary colors. For right now, you can put the rest of your colored pencils to the side. These are the 3 colors that we need. The 3 primary colors are going to blend and make other colors, and I want to show you how that happens. This will be very helpful as you're doing other art projects later on in the year. As we create other pictures, you will recognize the color temperature, different aspects of color because of what we've used. So let's begin. Choose one of the primaries. It doesn't matter which one, and it doesn't really matter where you place them. I'm going to do red first, and I'm going to color in one of these boxes labeled primary. I'm going to color lightly or medium pressure over the whole wedge, and I want to have it as even as I can. Don't worry that you still see the letters through it. That's not the concern. This is a learning experience. It's not a fine art piece. So I'm going to do my best to have my red be as even as possible. You can see that I've colored in that wedge with red. It's hopefully evenly red. I don't want to get too carried away in too heavy pressure, but I don't want it to be too light either. Now I'm going to choose one of the other 2 primaries, which I'll happen to do blue here. Blue, I'm going to do the same thing. I want to fill in this particular wedge with blue, and so I'm going to just begin by filling in and try to keep it as even as possible and blending. And as you notice, I'm not trying to color all the way down. I'm following the main tangent of the template, so I get a fairly even and similar weight, you can see, and I'm just keep it there and do a nice gentle thing. Here's where my eraser might come in. If it bothers you to have those little bits at the edge, take your eraser, or take your eraser. Doesn't matter. It isn't important. This is depends on how particular you are. And last, let's take our third primary color, yellow. Now these three colors work together to create all the other colors that we see in the color scheme, in the world. So when we blend them together in different ways, we're going to have other colors. If you watched the introductory video, you probably heard and saw the basics of the color wheel. The fact that when you mix this primary blue with this primary yellow together, we get what we call a secondary color. I'm going to write that in here just so that I remember what the S stands for. Secondary. This is a secondary color. It's the second step down from the two primaries. So, how I'm going to do this with my pencils to learn what actually happens, I'm going to lay in one color or the other first, just like I did before. Doesn't matter which one you begin with. Okay, now that I've gotten that in there, you notice it looks like, well, why two primaries? Well, I'm going to mix the other primary that's next to it, and I'm going to use the blue over the top, same color. I'm blending them together, and as I put that blue over the top of the yellow, I hope you can see that it is beginning to make a secondary color, and if I've done it well, you should be able to see. You can tell where I didn't add a lot of yellow. Okay. What color do I have? It's green. Now this is not a perfect, I'm going to add just a little bit more yellow to those places that are blue. But you'll notice that when I blend those together, I have green. Now it's not a thick, deep green like we would if we pulled it out of the box. But for what we're doing right now, it's exactly what we want to do. So let's go on. We're going to use our yellow again, and we're going to mix yellow with red this time. These two are side by side. I'm going to color the yellow box in. Or wedge, rather. No, I guess it's not a box. Here we go. Okay. There's my yellow as my base. And now I'm going to use the other primary, red, and I'm going to color red in on top of it. And if you've done it well and use about the same pressure on both of them, you should be able to get a color that is the second step down from the two primaries when you've mixed these two together. And I think you can see already what color I have. And some of my red needs a little bit more yellow here. Can you see that we have orange? Because we've blended the two primary colors, red and yellow, and we've gotten orange. That's our secondary color. Now I'm going to go back and finish up my third secondary color. This is going to be the color between blue and red. So I'm going to go ahead and lay my red in first. And now I'm going to use my blue. And as I do that, you'll see the third secondary color. Can you tell what's emerging here? Your goal is to make it as even as possible, and I think I'm hurrying a little. I'm not being quite as particular as I could be. But can you tell? I'm going to go over some of these blues a little bit here. Okay, so now you can see that I have my primary colors, red, blue, and yellow, and my secondary colors. When I mix red and yellow, I get orange. When I mix yellow and blue, I get green. And when I mix red and blue, I get purple. Now, we're going to do what are called the tertiary colors. This is the third step. The T-E-R-T, tert, is one of those Latin roots that tell us that it's a step, a third step. So step 1, step 2, step 3. We're always going to name these tertiary colors using the primary color name first. So I'm going to use a primary color and a secondary color, the ones that are here. When I use the primary color blue and I mix the secondary color green together, I'm going to get a tertiary color called blue-green. When I mix the primary color yellow with the secondary color orange, I'm going to get yellow-orange here. When I mix blue with the secondary color purple or violet, you'll often hear it called violet rather than purple. So blue-violet. It will be predominantly blue with a little hint of red. If I'm mixing this primary blue-green, it's going to be primarily blue with green. It's going to edge toward the green rather than the blue. If I do yellow-green, the green is going to be more yellow in quality. So this tertiary color is our next step. So I'm going to put lots of yellow in here because it's going to be my primary color that I'm mixing my green with. And here it gets a little tricky when we're just using these three colors, but I'm going to be sure you put plenty of the primary in here. Okay, and we're not going to use as heavy a pressure on this blue. I want it to be a little bit more yellow, a little hint of green, so just a much lighter attempt. In this particular, this is how we're creating this color. And if you were blending paints together, you would have a little bit different approach to making your yellow green. But I want to get a lot of yellow in here, and you'll notice that I'm going back more than once, getting my color in here. And I'm actually going to lay this kind of down on the side and add a little bit of blue. But can you see that my green is definitely not an even green? It's not just a basic green, it's more of a yellow green. Let's go over here and do the blue-green. And here's a way that makes it go quicker is if you lay your pencil on its side and blend in instead of trying to use just the point. Okay. So I hope you can see that these tertiary colors are closer to the primary, and so we name them blue-green, yellow-green. We name the primary and then we put the secondary first. So I have a tertiary color. This is tertiary. This is going to be named yellow-green, yellow-green. And I want you to remember that you're not going to call it green-yellow. You're always going to name it yellow-green. There's our green. And here's our blue-green. Notice I've used a hyphen when you're writing this text. Green. Can't talk and write at the same time. And here's my primary, which is blue. I'm going to make great big capitals on my primary colors. Here's my red. This is orange. And this I'm going to call violet. Some people will call it purple. Now we're going to use it violet here because when I make this particular secondary color, I'm going to call this blue-violet. And this is going to be red-violet. And red, orange, and yellow, orange. I'm going to continue coloring. You can work on yours and complete your color wheel. So there you have it, our color wheel. I could probably go back and create my primary colors a little more vividly so you can see that they are the main ones. And when you blend them, I'm going to go back and make my blue a little bit darker here. How dark you make them is going to be something you're going to want to I think my yellow could definitely stand a little more. Okay, you can see my primary colors, and as we create our secondary colors, there's a fairly equal blend. But as they get closer to the primary, they are predominantly more blue. This one in particular, let's use this blue-violet here. The tertiary color is closer to the primary color when it's blended here. Here it is closer to the primary color, so we name it that way. And when you see the color, you'll go, oh, that's a red. It's not quite a violet. It's a little bit red-violet. And so you begin to see that color can change as it moves from one primary toward the other. And so that is how our color wheel template goes. Now you have another color template, number 2, and it doesn't have anything on it. You can print this out as many times as you like and create your own color wheel just for fun. But I'd like to show you some other things about color just using this blank template. At this point, if you've been using your pencils like I have, you may wish to sharpen them, and so that's what I'm going to do. I use a small pencil sharpener. I'm going to get a piece of paper and catch my crumbles. You may have a pencil sharpener on the wall if you've got a schoolroom like some people. But here I've got a double size. It's a metal sharpener. It's kind of heavy for how small it is, and it's got a good blade that will cleanly sharpen your pencil. You can replace those blades if you get a good quality one, and they're not very expensive to do this. So I'm going to use this, and you see that it's got a small size and then a larger size. I'm going to use the standard size here, and I want to hold the sharpener firmly, and I want to push the pencil into it firmly. Keep a firm, even pressure and twist gently so that you get a nice clean twist. If you get to rattling around and letting this wobble up and down, you're going to break the lead. So be careful, and like I said, you're going to want to do it over a piece of paper to catch the crumbles so you can throw them in the garbage. Okay, we've got my red pencil here, nice and sharp. Can you see? Isn't that great? Set it aside. I'm going to do the yellow one. Seems to be kind of a mess too. Firm, even pressure in and around. I don't want to wobble it up and down. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm resting my the arm that's holding the sharpener on a table so that I can minimize the amount of wobble that I get. And I want to very gently and slowly take your time, and if it meets resistance, kind of back up and go at it again gently. There you go. And my last one, my blue. My 3 basic colors. And if you're doing it well, you're going to have a nice even peeling that comes out of there. And a handful of color. There we go. And you can see I've got color on my hands and color, but there's your pencil sharpener. I'm going to dump my crumbs. Set my paper aside. So now, like I said, this is not to, you can create another color wheel for yourself if you like, but what I'd like to do now is show you some of the things that happen when we mix colors. One of the things that people say, well, the primary colors, where's brown? Where is black? How do you get those? Well, black is the absence of color when we're talking about light, but when we're talking about pigments, you can create a black, depending on your materials, you can create a black by blending all three of the primary colors. And the amount and intensity of them, and depending on what you're doing, if you're using watercolor paint, you will have a different approach to making a black or a brown than if you're using colored pencils. I'm going to use these three primary colors to show you how you can create a brown. Your brown can shift from a reddish brown to a bluish grayish brown. To get a true black, you're not likely to be able to do that with colored pencils, so you're probably going to want to use a black colored pencil to do any places that you want to use black. One of the other things we learned about when we did our introductory video was the intensity of a color. And when we do our value scale in a few minutes, you'll see what I'm talking about. But we're going to use this black colored pencil to help us change the intensity of a color. So let's start out and create the neutral brown. And I'm going to just begin with the color blue, and I'm going to put it in, it doesn't matter which block, I'm just going to put in an even coating of blue on here. And I'm also going to fill in this triangle here, and I'll show you how we can shift the color in this particular, creating this kind of a brown. I'm going to add red in an equal amount here. And of course, you know I should have a violet color at this point. But I've mixed both of the primaries, and I have a fairly even violet color, or purple. And now I'm going to add yellow. I don't know if you can tell or not, but it is definitely not red, it's definitely not blue, it's definitely not yellow. It's not any of the primary or secondary colors, but we're getting a brown. Now, I've got this kind of even, medium, neutral. I would call it a neutral. Can you see, compared to these colors here, it's a blend of the three primary colors. If I want a brown that is stronger and darker, I may want to add more blue and perhaps more yellow to push it toward a, and I may want to blend in a little bit more red here. Okay. I'm pushing it closer and closer, and I'm going to go ahead in the middle here. Oops. I'm going to add a lot of pressure to this color right in here. And I'm going to add a lot of pressure here. A little bit more yellow. And a little bit more blue. And you can see I'm approaching black. A very dark neutral color. Okay? Can you see what's happened there? You can do a lot with just the three primary colors. One of the things you can do, if you've got just the primary color in a black pencil, you can reduce the intensity of a color. I'm going to color this particular square, or wedge, in red. On the side it goes a little more quickly to blend in my red. Get as even as I can, like we've done before. And I know this is kind of elementary, and I know it's not terribly artistic, but it's something you kind of want to have in your head, and if you do it yourself, you have a sense of what will happen. So I've got a nice even red there. This is a primary color, doesn't matter which one, but it's red, and in fact I'm going to give it a little bit more red so it's a little stronger red. When you try to add a white pencil to any of these, it does not push it down and make it a tint as easily as I would like, and so this is a place colored pencils fall down for creating tints, which are when you add white to something. But when you want to reduce the intensity and make it closer to a shade or a deeper one, reduce its intensity, we can take black and lightly go over it. It's still red. I'm probably gonna do this. I'm gonna blend up this whole thing here. Okay, and you'll notice as it gets down there, it's still red, but it is a very reduced in intensity red. It's just barely discernible that it's red, but it still is. So my neutral approaches one of the primary colors. Because we're using pencils, we have a certain limitation. When we can use watercolor or oil or acrylic paints, things will be a little different. It's a different ball game. But for right now, I wanted you to see how to create neutrals. We've created a fairly neutral brown here, but I want to do one where I've got a little bit more, say a bluish brown and then a reddish brown. So I'm going to put the basic color on again. We're going to do this. I'll just do it on both sides to get us started. Create our basic color. We're going to do all three primaries into here. Now when you look around in the world, sometimes the bark of a tree will be a bluish brown or a yellowish brown or a reddish brown. They will change in color, and I think of like a ponderosa pine has a reddish cast to its brown, and so I'm going to try to create a much redder brown. I'm going to put a lot more red into this particular color here and see if I can go to a reddish brown. Now of course I'm going to need those other primaries, and so I'm going to have to kind of keep working and blending to get the color I really intended, so that when I'm drawing a ponderosa pine and I need a brown, I only have the three primary colors to work with, I can have a reddish brown. Look at that. I can create a pretty believable reddish brown. Can you see that? Okay. I add a little more red to it even yet. See that? It becomes redder brown. The farther I go, I'm going to work down into this tip as well. Okay, let's get some action going here. Blue, some more blue in there. More yellow, keep it more brownish. Okay, do you see that my brown is really quite red compared to this bluish, well, more neutral brown actually. I could probably add a little more red to some of that. Okay. This one, I think I'm going to stick a little bit closer to a bluish brown, a grayish, more of a grayish brown. So I'm going to go more blue, a little more blue in the beginning. What is happening is that we are putting little bits of pigment down. Can you see the differences in the brownish color here? They're neutrals. They're not any one of the primaries, but they're kind of a neutral. And so, what did you see? Experiment with what you can do. First of all, we're going to go to our value scale. So here's where your number 2 pencil is going to come in. A value scale is just the lightness or darkness of a color. And if we begin with the lightest value, a high value, it means that there's little or no color. And by the time we get to number 10, it's going to be the darkest. So down here, for number 1, we want to use the side of our number 2 pencil, and we want to pencil in very, very lightly, just barely any color at all. It needs to be just a step above white, so that there's almost no color to it. The second value needs to be just a little bit darker. Not a lot, just a little, just a whisper so that it's different. A little bit darker, but not much. Don't get too carried away. Then, number 3, we're going to just keep going. And I want to get a little bit darker. That means a little heavier pressure. And don't worry, all these, you're missing these little places in the edges. What we're trying to do here is learn about how color, or light, dark goes. By the time you get to the end, you should have almost black. I hope that you notice that I went back and forth sometimes, several times. I used the side of my pencil and I moved from the lightest, highest value up through the value scale to the darkest value. Now, these steps in the scale can be labeled percentage-wise. So when I say that the value color, that it's a 40% value, I would say that the lightness or darkness of it is at about 40% on this particular scale of 1 to 10. If I say I want the letters colored in at a 90% value, I would say I want them quite dark. If I say I want them at a 20% value, I would probably be talking about a value of about here. I think it's instructive if you make yourself try to do this so that this 1 is just barely any color at all, and number 10 is as black as you can make it. Work in from the outside if you like. You saw me work from one end to the other. However you want to do it, but practice that. Well, that's great with black and white, and that's an important tool when we talk about the color and the lightness and darkness of something, is knowing the value scale. High value, 20%, 30% is very light. The color is light. If we're talking about a shadow being a 90% value shadow, that means that it's quite dark. Whereas 100% would be black. In fact, if I could, I might even push this harder yet and get it even blacker yet. And I might even want to lighten this up even more so that it's just barely any color at all in there. There we go. The same thing can happen with color. And you want to take one of your primaries, or even, I guess you could choose one of your other colors. Let's do that. Let's choose a green, just a basic beginning green here. And I'm going to do exactly the same thing with color so that you can see how color can become lighter and darker, and you have a value in your color. So I'm just going to put a whisper of green in the number 1 here so that we can tell, ooh, yeah, it's got a whisper of green. And number 2 needs a little more. Well, obviously, when you're using color, you're not going to black or white, but you are using the value, the lightness or darkness of a particular color. So here we have a really fairly dark green. I could probably go back over. As I was using my pencil, I don't know if you noticed, you probably couldn't tell, but I was trying to roll the pencil a little bit each stroke that I was making so that I'm taking off an even amount. If I just hold it perfectly flat, I'll end up flattening it to a funny little wedge. So roll your pencil slightly as you're doing it. But you can see the lightness or darkness of a color is part of the equation of what we're talking about. Use the last box to take a color and add the black pencil over it to create something that shows you how to change the intensity of a color. If we were to color in the entire box completely red, and then add black over it and bring it down to where there's hardly any black added, you would see the intensity of the red could be clear and pure here, clear and pure here, and work it to almost black. But so I'm going to do that just so you can see what I'm talking about. So I'm going to color the entire box one even color. That seems fairly evenly red. Now if I take my black and begin working toward the dark end as well, I should be able to show the difference in intensity of a color by the amount of black that's added to it. I hope you can see that you can change how strong the red is, how pure and clear the hue of red is here compared to its intensity has been reduced tremendously by adding black to it. We could go the other direction and add white to it to the point where it's barely discernibly red, and so we could work the other way to the white, but it doesn't work really well with colored pencils, so we're not going to do that. But you get the idea. Color has a number of different components to it, and so that's part of what we want you to learn. Now we want to talk about the color schemes that we can create using the colors that we know about now. How to create a pleasing color scheme, or one that is going to accomplish the purpose that you have when you make a painting. Sometimes you want your painting to be very energetic and have a lively quality. You might want to use what we call a complementary scheme then. Perhaps you want one that seems very balanced and very full of life, but also a balanced sense, and that you might use a triadic one. To get a very serene, very, I guess serene is the best word, you will want to use a monochromatic scheme. And if you want one that has a quality of coherence and balance and rhythm, and you're going to maybe want to use an analogous. Now those are great big words. We'll go through them one at a time and talk about how to know what scheme you might want to use. I have the primary colors red, blue, red, blue, and yellow. And of course my secondaries. If I choose colors that are next to one another on the color wheel, let's say 3 colors, choose 3 colors next to one another on the color wheel, any 3. If I choose the primary color yellow and I choose 3 colors altogether, 1, 2, 3, I have a color scheme that is very warm in temperature. It feels, color-wise, it has a sense of warmth and energy because we associate these colors with things like fire and warmth. And so I can create a color scheme side by side here using this primary and have a analogous color scheme. And so I'm going to write that word down for you. The word is analogous, and I'm going to put it over here on, oh, my pencil is drying up. Yep, I'm going to have to shift gears to my, okay. Analogous. Forget my spelling, trying to talk and think at the same time. Analogous. A color scheme that is analogous are 3 colors that are side by side. They're going to have a harmony because they're set side by side. I could use my yellow and go this direction. The harmony shifts to a cheerful but calmer color scheme. The blue and green and purple colors are cool in color temperature, and so because they are on that side, you think of the color of water as cool and leaves are cool green, as so we think of things that are lavender and blue are what you find in snow, in the color of snow. And so we call these the cool colors, and these are the warm colors. But an analogous color scheme is be 3 colors side by side on a color scheme. A monochromatic color scheme is 1 color. Now I'm not going to introduce any other primaries if I can help it, so I'm going to use blues for my monochromatic. I'm going to use blues that have a blue-green cast, blues that have a reddish cast, but it's primarily blue. Every color that I use in it is going to read blue. I'm not going to have a strong blue-green or a strong blue-violet, but they're going to have those undertones, but it will be primarily blue, or primarily yellow, or maybe you want to use an orange, primarily orange color scheme. You may use these others in a shift. So a monochromatic and an analogous are very, very close to one another. The monochromatic is much more focused on one of the colors, and it's usually the secondary or primary color that you will use when you're creating a monochromatic scheme. A complementary scheme is going to give you a sense of energy and excitement. So if you want a complementary color scheme, you can use the colors that are opposite one another on the color wheel. You know, at Christmas time we have the colors traditionally are red and green. That is a complementary color scheme. Red and green are opposite one another across the color wheel. Red and green are considered complements. They make one another up. And why are they called complements? Well, it's because we have a primary color plus the secondary that's made up of the other 2 primaries. Because they are across from one another, they have kind of an energy to them. You can shift off of the primaries to do a complementary color scheme. Red, orange, and blue, green are across from one another. You get the same kind of energy and excitement, but for the next step of what we're going to do today, just to do that, is to decide, I want to use one of these color schemes and ways to create my picture. Triadic color scheme, one that has 3 colors that are in an equal portion across the color scheme. You notice that we have red, blue, and yellow, and they form a triangle on the color wheel. We can move 1 notch. We can do blue-green, yellow-orange, and red-violet. Those 3 colors can help us build, because they create a triangle across the color wheel. We can go over here to green, orange, and violet. We can do that. Here's another stable color scheme. It's got all the colors in the color wheel, and yet those are the 3 predominant colors that we're going to use. I want to show you really quickly how I'm going to transfer my picture before we come back to actually coloring the picture. Now you may have chosen to use the downloaded picture or downloaded one of your own. Whatever it is, that's great. It's a black and white outline drawing, and that's all you need. I decided that I'd like to have a drawing that I made, use a drawing that I made a long time ago. And as you can see, it's pretty rough. I had done it on scrap paper here, and it's pasted together because I don't remember why, but I ran out of paper when I was starting to draw, so I taped some more on there. And I had obviously used my washi tape to tape it down and use it. So because I want to transfer this to other paper, I'm going to make a nice clean drawing of it, which I've already done. You can see, probably not really clearly, put white paper behind it, you can see that I did a simple outline drawing, tracing it, using tracing paper. If you've done your drawing and it isn't as beat up as mine, you can transfer it without having to do it on tracing paper. But since it's on tracing paper, first of all, I'm going to take my drawing and make it into a black and white line drawing by using my felt tip fine line marker. So you can see I'm using my Sharpie marker here. And I'm going to put all of my little shapes and my little birds in here. And you notice I have a very simple drawing. I am not trying to make a really elaborate drawing here. So there you see I have my drawing, but it's just on this light paper, and if I haven't drawn it on my HP paper, my LaserJet paper to begin with, then you're going to want to do this next step. And this is where something you're going to use a number of times probably, to take your drawings and put them on the final paper if you've done a rough paper drawing. And so now I'm ready to put it onto my drawing tablet paper, which is right here. But to do that, I need to do something. You can see, I can see through this, it doesn't matter, but I need to take the side of my number 2 pencil, and I'm going to use it, and I don't need to color the whole thing, but wherever there's drawing, I want to put some lead, and I want it to be fairly heavy. Okay, use the side of your pencil and make a nice firm dark, put graphite down there. The nice part about and transferring this way, this number 2 pencil, when you trace it down, you will be able to erase any pencil marks that you don't want, just as if you were erasing a pencil mark on a paper. So you can see I'm quickly putting pencil over things I'm going to want to transfer, just those lines. I don't need to color in the whole thing. There is a product that you can purchase that's transfer paper. It's fairly spendy, and it has the drawback of being a little bit waxy. And so I use it sometimes when I've got a big project, a larger scale project, but for something this small, it's probably easiest to make your rough drawing and then refine it and do this on your paper. Okay. Oh, I'm almost done. Okay. I want to be sure that the line where I'm going to do it, I want to have plenty of graphite down there. And here's a place where you want to be turning your pencil as you put the graphite down. Oh my goodness, we're almost there. There we go. Okay, you can see, if you're not sure if your paper's too thick, hold it up to the light. And I can see right here, I might want to do just a little bit more just to be sure that I have some graphite in case I go off the line. I'm going to hold it up to the light until. So now I'm ready to put it on my drawing paper. So I'm going to open up my drawing tablet. Oh, you can see I've done other color things in here. I've done other fun things in my tablet. And I'm going to go to the next clean page here. Yep, that's a good clean page. So I'm going to put my picture down here near the bottom. And I'm going to use my bits of washi tape to hold it in place. You can use masking tape, or I would recommend something that if you're using masking tape, take the masking tape and stick it on your clothes once and then put it down. That'll take away some of the stickiness of it and it won't tear up the paper. Okay, so now I have my picture taped down, ready to trace down, and I'm going to want to go over all of those lines to put that drawing down. So I'm going to start here and I'm going to work from left to right. Your right hand or left handed, you might want to work the other direction. Doesn't matter, but just try to concentrate and make sure that you've covered everything. And when you've taped it down, when you're going to check later, you're only going to lift 1/2. to double check so that you can get it back in place if you miss something. So I'm going to start here, and I can see my pencil right over the top of my pen drawing. I'm going to try to go the same way I did when I drew it to begin with. Okay, I've finished drawing there, tracing this down, but to check to make sure that I've traced everything, I'm going to carefully lift one edge, hold the other edge down very firmly, and double check, kind of glance and see. Oh yeah, it looks like I missed this little fellow's eye. So I'm going to lay my paper back down carefully, and I'm going to draw his eye in there. Okay, now I'm going to lift and double check one more time. Yep, there's his eye. I think I've gotten everything. Okay, so I'm good. I can take my drawing, my tracing off, and I'm ready to do my drawing. Now, if you've made your own drawing and you've traced it down this way, you do not need to use a marker to make an outline. If you did downloaded a picture, you have kind of a color book effect, and that's fine. But I'm going to avoid that and try to make a drawing that's a little closer to realist, not quite so color book quality. It doesn't matter, this is just a practice time. But I want you to choose now. We're going to go back and we're going to choose a color scheme. And I'm looking at my little drawing here. I'm thinking, what do I want? I'm thinking for my color scheme, I may want to use this wonderful, cheerful red, orange, yellow, green, and blue, violet, this triadic color scheme. Actually, I really like the idea of this triadic color scheme. And so I'm going to choose my blue, violet, my yellow, green, there's my yellow, green, and my blue, violet. Where's my blue? And I want a little bit of red to make that blue, violet, my yellow, green, and my red, orange. So my red's going to do some double duty here. So I'm going to begin. Okay, I've traced my drawing down, and I actually colored it, and I wasn't really happy because I chose this triadic color scheme where I used yellow, green, blue, violet, and red, orange, and I used them in fairly equal portions. I blended them and made the brown, and you can see it's just not quite right. It's too contrived. I'm not happy with these little birds. The real birds don't, except for parakeets, aren't green, and very rarely do you find a red bird that looks like this. Cardinals are not quite like that, and so this isn't really a great, it isn't working for me as a picture. And the colors are like it's an energetic and cheerful picture because I've chosen those colors. But I have a problem. I've chosen a triadic color scheme, but I think my problem is that I need to be a little bit more thinking through what my color is going to do for me. And rather than trying to stick with this 1, 2, 3 option, I think I'm going to use those triadic colors, but I think I'm going to be a little less concerned about using exactly perfectly those. I'm going to let those dominate my color scheme, and then I'm going to use them to create interest in my focal point and use the color to help me accomplish what I want, and that is to bring attention to my focal point and to my subject matter. So I'm going to recolor this, and so I'd like you to see what I do as I recolor it. Well, I want you to see what I'm planning to do. I'm going to try to make this more realistic, and I'm going to try to bring attention to my focal point. And I think if you see the grid, I've got a kind of a rectangle shape for my picture here, just kind of loose at this point. I really want the viewer's attention on this little bird. It's as if there's a conversation going on between these birds. And so this is the little bird who seems to be the one because of his placement in the physical scheme of things, and because of the eye direction. If I were to draw an imaginary triangle between their eyes, you'll see that the point comes right to this little bird's eye, as if he's the focus. Also the lines that sweep up here, that come up here, they all kind of come and converge toward this little fellow right here, this area of interest. So I'm going to focus my color work here. I'm going to use the color that I put here and here to help bring attention to this focal point. So that's what you're learning with these color schemes, is how to take the predominant colors that you use to help accomplish focusing your viewer's attention on what you think is important, what you want to bring out. It may be that you're going to use your color scheme to establish a mood. Remember, on this particular one, it was very cheerful. I made a happy picture. Cheerful, not terribly believable, but happy. And so your use of color can do that for you. So you can set the tone and the mood by the color you use. You can also use your color to focus your attention. So here I go. I'm going to go ahead and color this, and we'll see what comes. And I'm going to be doing this without giving it a huge amount of thought ahead of time, so maybe I'll make some mistakes, and you'll see. I also want to tell you that instead of trying to totally blend all the time, using my basic colors to create this brown, I'm going to go ahead and use the brown pencil in my box. I still like the lively quality that blending colors together to create a neutral gives this brown. It's not nearly as dead a brown as when I would use a brown like this. I'm going to color a little bit here so you get an idea of the contrast. You can see that looks brown, but it doesn't have that lively quality as you can see compared. So I am going to use that to help give some depth to it without having to spend so much time. But I wanted you to see that. So here we go. I'm ready to draw. Everything evenly colored, and I spent a lot of time doing these little grasses and put in a lot of detail. But when I step back and look at my picture, I recognize that it is really almost all the same value. The only place I'm not seeing the same value is this little area in here, and you'll see this area in here and this area in here. That's about the only place in my picture where the value isn't quite the same. I have gotten a little bit of a dark area. There's a bit of a dark area under each one for the shadow, and of course right in here. But that's not quite enough, and it's not really helping my picture and pushing my viewer's eye to where I want it. I want to use light and dark to help me accomplish this. So my best choice would be to go back and push the values of my colors so that they are darker or lighter. Keep lighter places light and darker places dark to build contrast, to help push my attention to where I want it, and to help accomplish what I want. This is so even, it becomes bland, and it's not terribly interesting. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time and see if I can make it just a little bit stronger somehow, and So I'm going to just play with it a little more. Who knows, it may not work. Like I said, I could be making some mistakes. So here I go. I'm going to go back and work on my birds a little bit. I hope you can see that I pushed the values, the lightness and darkness of some of the things to pop them out. The background, my grasses and my tree trunk were all about the same value as the little birds. And so I took my colors and I pushed the darkness of these little fellows and made them a little more neutral. And they're kind of a secondary point of interest. And the other aspect of this is that the color that I've used, the red and the blue and the red, and those colors are popping out and giving my little bird that's the focal point, giving him the preeminence. You'll also notice that my dark areas that I've used are helping do some almost subtle arrows that bring our attention. If we could kind of draw lines here, they all kind of come up and focus to this little fellow here. This line across here, there's an imaginary line that draws us into this little fellow because of the swoop of this bird's tail and their bodies together. And you'll notice that it comes in here from the side. And so this little fellow, the color has helped me, and the lightness and darkness, the values that I've chosen help me. And so that's one of the magic parts of creating a piece of artwork using a different color scheme. I still have a lot of visual energy because I've used the triadic color scheme that I set out with, and I've kind of pushed it and helped it. It helps me create a picture that is quite a bit more realistic and a little bit more energetic because of my color choices. And so I'm pretty happy with this. I think I'm ready to sign my name. Here I go. I date and write my name and date on pictures that I'm happy with and am ready to keep. I possibly would end up framing this little piece. It's hard to say. So always write your name and date on a picture. I choose a place low in the right corner. You could do it in the lower left corner. You can write it sideways on one of the margins. But whatever you do, be sure that you sign your name. And I try to sign my name so that it looks about the same each time. So you may want to give some thought to how your signature looks as you sign your paintings. So there you go. We're done. There you have it. We have learned about how to put color together using the three basic primary colors, red, blue, and yellow, to accomplish a full range of color. Now, when you use paint, as we will in other video sessions, you'll have some different ways that color behaves, but these basics are true for any way that you use color. I want you to look forward to actually using paint, but in the meantime, get busy using your pencils and have a great time. Even if you use just black and white drawings, you've learned a lot about the value scale, how to use lightness and darkness to accomplish what you're looking to do. So it's been great. I hope you have a great time drawing and painting. That's all. Goodbye.